Captain Thaddeus Thad. Blackwood's diplomatic vessel pierced Arera's atmosphere, the planet's binary suns casting prismatic reflections across his viewport. The crystalline spires of the capital city jutted through emerald clouds like nature's own crown jewels, their translucent surfaces refracting sunlight into rainbow cascades. "Quite the light show they've got going," Thad muttered, adjusting his formal Earth uniform's collar. The stiff material chafed against his neck, a constant reminder of the weight of his mission. Earth needed this alliance, desperately. His pilot, Lieutenant Kayla Rodriguez, guided their ship between floating gardens that defied gravity itself, their exotic blooms swaying in artificial wind currents. "Sir, receiving landing coordinates from the Royal Palace. Let's hope they're more welcoming than their last transmission suggested." Thad pulled up the message on his datapad, grimacing at the thinly veiled condescension in every line. The Araran royal house had made their opinion of humans clear: primitive, barely worth their time. The ship settled onto a crystal landing pad that hummed with energy. A delegation awaited them, led by three figures whose beauty was matched only by their obvious disdain. The infamous princesses of Araira. Thad squared his shoulders and activated the ship's ramp. Time to charm the uncharmed. Princess Elena, the eldest, stepped forward first. Her silver hair cascaded down her back in elaborate braids, each strand seeming to catch and amplify the light. Her eyes, golden like molten sunlight, assessed Thad with clinical precision. "Captain Blackwood," she pronounced his name like it was beneath her station, "welcome to Araira. I trust your primitive navigation systems managed to follow our beacon without too much difficulty?" Thad bowed with deliberate flourish. "They did indeed, Your Highness. Though I must admit, your planet's beauty nearly distracted us into several wrong turns. It's not every day we get to see architecture that makes Earth's greatest achievements look like children's building blocks." Miara, the warrior princess, snorted. Her ceremonial armor gleamed with an iridescent sheen, and an energy blade hung at her hip. "At least you acknowledge your limitations. Perhaps there's hope for your species yet." "Oh, there's always hope," Thad replied cheerfully. "It's one of our many primitive traits, stubborn optimism in the face of superior beings." The youngest sister, Lexa, covered her mouth, but not before a small laugh escaped. When her sister shot her sharp looks, she quickly composed herself. "We should proceed to the welcome ceremony, unless the captain needs time to acclimate to our atmosphere." "I'm quite comfortable, Princess Lexa, though I appreciate your concern for my delicate human constitution." As they walked through corridors of living crystal, Thad noted how other courtiers scattered at the princess's approach. Interesting. Fear or respect? Perhaps both. Elena fell into step beside him, her movements as precise as a quantum calculation. "I've reviewed Earth's technological proposals. Your solutions to quantum entanglement are—" She paused for effect. "Quaint." "We do our best with sticks and stones, Your Highness, though I'd be fascinated to hear your thoughts on our recent breakthroughs in neural interface technology." Something flickered in her eyes, interest quickly masked by manufactured boredom. "Perhaps if I find myself with nothing better to do, which seems unlikely." They entered a vast chamber where anti-gravity platforms held hundreds of Araran nobles, floating at different heights, creating a three-dimensional court. Thad noted how the positions seemed to indicate social status. The higher the platform, the more important the noble. His own platform, he couldn't help but notice, hovered barely above floor level. The welcome ceremony proceeded with all the warmth of a neutron star. Noble after noble approached their elevated platforms to introduce themselves, each managing to slip subtle insults about Earth into their greetings. Thad maintained his easy smile, mentally cataloging every slight and every reaction. "Tell us, Captain Blackwood," Miara called out from her high platform, her voice carrying across the chamber. "Is it true that humans still rely on physical combat training? How charmingly ancestral." "We find it keeps us humble, Your Highness," Thad replied, spreading his hands. "Though I'm sure our hand-to-hand techniques would seem like children's games compared to your advanced combat systems." "Perhaps a demonstration?" Miara's smile turned predatory. "I would be honored to show you how we train our warriors." Several nobles tittered, clearly anticipating entertainment at the human's expense. But Thad caught something else. A tension in the room, a current of unease beneath the mockery. I would be deeply honored, Princess Miara. Though I should warn you, he paused for effect. I'm a terrible dancer partner. Your toes might be at risk. Unexpected laughter rippled through the chamber. Even Lexa giggled openly this time, earning another sharp look from her sisters. You mistake this for a game, Captain, Elena cut in, her golden eyes narrowing. Our time is valuable. If Earth truly seeks an alliance, perhaps you should focus on convincing us of your worth, rather than attempting to charm us with your peculiar humor. Thad activated his datapad, projecting a holographic display of Earth's latest technological achievements. You're absolutely right, Your Highness. Shall we discuss how our primitive quantum communications network achieved faster than light transmission last month? Or would you prefer to start with our breakthroughs in bioneural interfacing? The projection caught Elena's attention despite herself. Her eyes widened fractionally at the scrolling data, though she quickly masked her interest. Impossible, she declared. Your civilization hasn't even mastered basic gravity manipulation. You expect us to believe that we might excel in areas you haven't considered? Thad interrupted gently. Sometimes the most primitive paths lead to unexpected destinations. The chamber fell silent. No one interrupted the eldest princess. Elena's platform glided closer to his, descending until they were nearly at eye level. You're either very brave or very foolish, Captain. Why choose? I find life more interesting when embracing both qualities. A subtle shift rippled through the court. Nobles exchanged glances, adjusted their positions. Thad had challenged the expected power dynamic, and now they waited to see how the princesses would respond. Miara's platform descended sharply. Tomorrow morning, Captain, the training arena. We'll see how well your primitive paths serve you there. I look forward to it, Your Highness, though I hope you'll forgive me if I don't manage any fancy anti-gravity flips. As the ceremony concluded, Thad noticed Lexa studying him with genuine curiosity. When their eyes met, she didn't immediately look away like the others. Lieutenant Rodriguez was waiting outside the chamber. Sir, that was interesting. Thad grinned. Nothing like a little diplomatic tension to get the blood flowing. I was going to say suicidal. Did you see their weapon systems? The princess could vaporize you tomorrow without breaking a sweat. Probably, Thad agreed cheerfully. But did you notice how the court reacted when I challenged Elena? There's dissent here, hidden beneath all that crystal and sophistication. And getting yourself killed helps Earth how exactly? They're not going to kill me. Thad pulled up his datapad, reviewing the scans he'd been quietly running throughout the ceremony. They're too intrigued. Besides, I spotted at least 3 structural weaknesses in their defense grid while we were flying in. If they were really as superior as they claim. Rodriguez shook her head. Just try not to start an interplanetary incident before dinner? No promises, but speaking of dinner, Thad checked his schedule. Looks like I'm dining with the royal family tonight. Want to bet on how many ways they'll find to call me primitive between courses? Sir, with all due respect, be careful. These people, they're not just playing political games. The way those nobles looked at the princesses, there's fear there. Thad's expression sobered. I know, and fear like that usually means trouble's brewing. Keep monitoring the local communications channels. I want to know what's really happening on this shinning crystal world. Later, as Thad prepared for dinner, he reviewed his initial observations. The princess's mockery felt rehearsed, almost performative. Elena's quick interest in Earth's technology, Miara's eagerness to test him personally, Lexa's poorly hidden amusement, all suggested complexity beneath their unified front of disdain. The royal dining hall proved to be another exercise in architectural showing off. The entire room seemed to float in midair, its crystal walls transparent enough to show the glittering cityscape below. The table itself was a masterpiece of controlled gravity, with dishes and drinks hovering at perfect serving height. Impressed, Captain? Elena asked as he took his seat. Or is floating furniture another of Earth's quaint achievements? Actually, we still prefer our tables firmly planted on the ground, Thad replied, carefully managing his wineglass. Less chance of wearing your dinner when the gravity fails. Our systems don't fail, Miara stated flatly. Everything fails eventually, Your Highness. The trick is learning to adapt when it does. Is that Earth's grand philosophy? Elena raised an elegant eyebrow. Prepare for failure. More like, expect the unexpected. Thad sampled what appeared to be some kind of luminescent seafood. Though I must say, your unexpected is considerably more elegant than ours. You speak in riddles, Captain Blackwood, Lexa observed, speaking directly to him for the first time. Yet I sense purpose behind your words. Sometimes a riddle is just a riddle, Princess. And sometimes... He let the sentence hang as one of the floating dishes wobbled slightly. A tiny imperfection in the gravity field that only he seemed to notice. The king, silent until now, leaned forward. Tell me, Captain, what does Earth truly seek from this alliance? Besides our obviously superior technology? Honestly, understanding. Thad met the king's gaze steadily. The galaxy's a big place. Lots of unexpected challenges ahead. Earth believes we're stronger facing them together, even if some of us are more primitive than others. How diplomatic of you, Elena said dryly, though I suppose diplomacy is one of the few areas where primitive species can excel. You'd be surprised what primitive species can achieve, Your Highness. History has a way of favoring the adaptable over the advanced. The dinner continued in this vein, a delicate dance of barbed compliments and veiled observations. But throughout it all, Thad noticed things. The way the king watched his daughter's interactions, the subtle tensions between the sisters themselves, the careful distance maintained by the servants. This wasn't just a proud civilization looking down on Earth. This was a society under strain, using its superiority as a shield against change. Tomorrow's training session with Miara would be interesting indeed. After dinner, Thad found himself in one of the palace's crystalline gardens, supposedly to acclimate to the evening atmosphere. In reality, he suspected the princesses wanted to observe his reaction to their world's wonders. He didn't disappoint them, letting out a low whistle as floating orbs of light danced between exotic flowers that changed color with each breeze. Impressed by simple bioluminescence, Captain? Elena's voice carried from behind him. She emerged from behind a crystalline tree, its branches chiming softly as she passed. Impressed by everything, Your Highness. Thad turned, offering his most disarming smile. Though at the moment, the bioluminescence is running a distant second. Her golden eyes narrowed, but he caught the slight uplift at the corner of her mouth. Your attempts at charm are as transparent as our architecture. Transparent, but potentially load-bearing? He gestured to the crystal structures around them. Sometimes the clearest things have hidden strength. And sometimes, Miara's voice cut in as she appeared from another path, clarity reveals weakness. She was still in her ceremonial armor, though she'd removed the more ornate pieces. The sleeker form highlighted her warrior's physique. Speaking of weakness, Thad said, I don't suppose either of you would care to give me tips about tomorrow's training session? In the interest of not making humans look completely incompetent? Miara's laugh was sharp but not entirely unkind. Where would be the fun in that, Captain? I'm looking forward to demonstrating the difference between real combat training and your, what did you call them? Children's games. Oh, I wouldn't worry too much about me. Thad stretched casually, noting how both sisters tracked the movement. I'm surprisingly bouncy for a primitive being. Is everything a joke to you? Elena asked, but there was genuine curiosity beneath the disdain. Not everything. Thad's voice turned serious. Earth's desire for this alliance, for instance. That's very real. And what would you give for this alliance, Captain? Lexa's quiet voice joined them as she stepped out from behind a floating flower display. In the garden's shifting light, she looked younger, more vulnerable than during the formal functions. That depends. Thad met each sister's gaze in turn, letting his usual humor fade. On whether what we're offering is what Arira truly needs. The sisters exchanged glances, something unspoken passing between them. And what do you think we need, Primitive One? Miara challenged, stepping closer. Besides better nicknames for your diplomatic guests? Thad grinned, breaking the tension. I'll tell you what. If I survive tomorrow's training session with all my limbs intact, maybe we can discuss it over dinner. Just the four of us. Bold of you to assume you'll be conscious for dinner, Miara smirked. Bold is my middle name. Actually, it's Theodore, but I prefer bold. Lexa giggled, then quickly composed herself when Elena shot her a look. But Thad noticed Elena's own expression had softened slightly. Your confidence is either admirable or delusional, she said, moving to examine a nearby flower. Though I suppose we'll find out which tomorrow. Care to place a wager on the outcome? Thad suggested, following her to the flower. If I manage to impress Miara during training, you have to let me show you some of Earth's primitive technology, in detail. Elena turned, finding him closer than she'd expected. And if you fail to impress, then I'll admit publicly that humans are hopelessly primitive and should stick to finger painting and hitting rocks together. You'd humiliate yourself and your planet for a bet, Miara asked incredulously. For a chance to show Princess Elena something that might genuinely surprise her? Thad smiled at the eldest sister. Worth the risk. The garden's lights shifted, casting rainbow patterns across their faces. For a moment, no one spoke. I accept your wager, Elena finally said, though I wonder if Earth knows their diplomat is so cavalier with their reputation. Oh, they knew exactly what they were getting when they sent me. Thad winked. That's why they made sure my middle name wasn't actually careful. Later that night, in his assigned quarters, Thad reviewed the palace's security feeds he'd managed to access. Lieutenant Rodriguez's voice came through his communicator. Sir, are you sure about this? I've analyzed Princess Miara's combat records. She's, well, let's just say formidable is an understatement. Noted and appreciated. Thad studied a particular sequence of movements. But did you notice how she favors her left side? Almost like she's compensating for something. For being able to move faster than human reflexes can track? Nobody's perfect, Lieutenant. Not even gorgeous alien princesses who can probably kill me with their pinky fingers. Speaking of the princesses, Rodriguez's tone turned knowing. The bet with Princess Elena? Really? Sometimes the best diplomatic strategies aren't found in any manual. And sometimes diplomats get themselves spaced for being too clever. Thad laughed. Have a little faith, Lieutenant. Besides, did you see how interested she was in the neural interface specs? There's a genuine scientist under all that royal disdain. Just be careful tomorrow. All three of them were watching you very closely in that garden. I noticed. Thad's smile turned thoughtful. Interesting, isn't it? How they keep testing me, but not quite the way you'd expect from people who truly believe we're primitive. Maybe they're just thorough in their disdain? Or maybe, Thad mused, they're looking for something specific, something they're not finding in their own society. He spent another hour studying combat footage before finally retiring. As he drifted off to sleep, he found himself remembering the way Elena's eyes had lit up at the mention of Earth's technology, how Miara's challenges carried an undercurrent of hope rather than pure mockery, and how Lexa seemed to be searching for permission to show her true reactions. Tomorrow would be interesting indeed, and if he played his cards right, it might be the first step towards something far more significant than just an alliance between worlds. The next morning arrived with Arira's twin sons painting the Crystal City in sheets of gold and amber. Thad arrived at the training arena early, finding it empty save for a few anti-gravity training drones hovering at various heights. Warming up, Captain. Lexa's voice startled him. She'd entered silently, wearing a simpler version of her usual royal attire. More like saying my prayers, he replied cheerfully. Any last-minute advice for surviving your sister? Lexa moved closer, her expression serious. Why do you do this? Turn everything into a joke, even when facing real danger. Would you prefer I tremble in fear of your superior abilities? I would prefer to understand you. Her honesty caught him off guard. You're not what we expected. I get that a lot, Thad said softly, though usually people sound less intrigued when they say it. Before Lexa could respond, the arena's main doors swept open. Miara strode in, her combat suit gleaming with integrated tech. Behind her, Elena entered more sedately, taking a position in the elevated observation area. Ready to demonstrate your primitive prowess, Captain? Miara's grin was all predator. Always ready to make a fool of myself for a beautiful woman, Thad replied, stretching his shoulders. Though usually it involves dancing rather than combat. This is not a game, Miara warned, though her eyes sparkled with amusement. Life's more fun when everything's a game. Thad moved to the center of the arena. "Shall we dance, Your Highness?" Miara launched forward with startling speed, her first strike aimed at his head. Thad dropped and rolled, coming up with a flourish that made it look more like a dance move than a defensive maneuver. "Points for style?" he asked hopefully. "Points for surviving the first 5 seconds," Elena called from above. "Though I wouldn't get too confident." Miara pressed her attack, her movements a blur of practiced lethal grace. But Thad kept moving, never quite where her strikes landed, his own movements unpredictable and oddly rhythmic. "You're not fighting back," Miara observed, pausing momentarily. "I'm admiring your technique," Thad replied, slightly breathless, but still grinning. "Besides, I thought this was a demonstration, not a real fight." "Everything's real here, Captain." Miara's next sequence of attacks drove him toward the arena wall. "No more games." "But games are what humans do best," Thad said, then did something completely unexpected. He started humming an earth waltz and moving in time to it. Miara's rhythm faltered slightly. "What are you doing?" "Introducing a little chaos into the system." His movements shifted to match the waltz timing. "Care to join me?" "This is combat training, not a dance hall." "Why not both?" Thad spun away from a particularly vicious strike, turning it into a graceful twirl. "Your combat style is already like a dance. Beautiful, precise, lethal, but maybe too precise." Something shifted in Miara's eyes. Her next attack followed the rhythm he'd established, testing his theory. Thad responded in kind, and suddenly they were moving together in a deadly choreography. From above, Elena leaned forward, her golden eyes narrow with concentration. Lexa had moved to stand beside her, watching the display with undisguised fascination. "He's turning her own training against her," Elena murmured, making her adapt to his rhythm instead of imposing hers. "It's clever," Lexa admitted, "and oddly beautiful." In the arena, Thad and Miara's dance had evolved. She was still clearly superior in skill and speed, but his unpredictability kept her off balance just enough to make it interesting. "You're holding back," he said during a particularly close exchange. "So are you," Miara countered, surprise evident in her voice. "Maybe we both have something to prove." Thad spun inside her guard, closer than anyone had likely dared get. "And maybe it's not what everyone thinks." Their faces were inches apart for a moment before Miara executed a perfect throw that sent him flying. Thad turned it into a controlled roll, coming up with his hands raised in surrender. "I yield to superior skill and superior beauty," he declared dramatically. Miara stood frozen for a moment, then let out a laugh that seemed to surprise even her. "You are either the most foolish or the most brilliant diplomat I've ever encountered." "Why choose?" Thad brushed himself off. "Though I hope this means I've earned that private dinner discussion." "You survived," Elena acknowledged, descending to the arena floor, "though I'm not sure that qualifies as impressive." "No," Thad raised an eyebrow. "Then why did you record the entire session on your personal device?" Elena's hand moved reflexively to her datapad. "For analysis of human weaknesses, obviously." "Obviously?" Thad's smile was knowing. "Just as I was obviously only dancing to avoid getting hit, and not to demonstrate how traditional combat patterns can be disrupted by unexpected variables." All three sisters stared at him with new consideration. "You planned this," Miara realized. "The jokes, the flirting, the dancing. It was all to show us that sometimes the most primitive approach can reveal sophisticated truths," Thad suggested. "Or maybe I just really wanted that dinner date." "It wasn't a date," Elena said quickly. "My mistake. Though since I won our bet, I believe you owe me a technology demonstration." He pulled out his own datapad. "Unless you're not interested in how Earth's primitive neural interfaces achieve quantum coherence." Elena's professional mask cracked slightly. "That's impossible without thinking outside traditional patterns," Thad finished. "Amazing what you can achieve when you're too primitive to know what's impossible." Lexa stepped forward. "I wish to attend this demonstration as well." "The more the merrier," Thad said cheerfully. "Though I should warn you, my technical explanations tend to include terrible science puns." "We will endure somehow," Miara said dryly. but her eyes were bright with interest. As they left the arena, Thad caught Lieutenant Rodriguez's eye from where she'd been observing. She gave him a subtle nod. All the security scans they'd been running during the demonstration had completed successfully. This had never been just about proving himself in combat. Every movement, every joke, every flirtation had served multiple purposes. He'd learned more about the sisters' personalities, confirmed suspicions about their security systems, and most importantly, cracked the perfect facades they presented to the world. Now came the real challenge, turning that crack into a bridge between worlds. But first, he had a dinner date that wasn't actually a date to prepare for. "Captain," Elena called as he turned to leave, "your combat style was unconventional." "Thank you, Your Highness. Your sister is an amazing partner." "That's not what I—" She paused, composing herself. "The demonstration will be in my private laboratory. Don't be late." "Wouldn't dream of it." Thad bowed slightly. "Though I might suggest we all wear something less formal. Technical discussions can get quite animated." The look all three sisters gave him suggested he was either very brave or very foolish. But then again, that seemed to be becoming his signature diplomatic style. Later that evening, after the technology demonstration, which involved far more terrible science puns than anyone was prepared for, Thad found himself preparing for the most crucial phase of his plan. The public debate with Miara about Orira's defense systems would either cement Earth's position as a valuable ally or confirm their status as primitive outsiders. The Great Hall was packed with nobility, their floating platforms arranged in concentric circles around the central debate area. King Zareth sat at the highest point, his crystalline throne catching the light of the setting suns. "Nervosen, Capitan?" Lexa asked as she passed by his preparation area. "Terrified," Thad admitted cheerfully. "But as we primitive humans say, go big or go home." "I don't understand that phrase," she frowned. "It means I'm about to do something either brilliant or catastrophically stupid." "Those seem to be your only two settings," Elena commented, approaching with a datapad. "The debate parameters have been set. Miara will present our defense capabilities, and you will attempt to, what was the phrase, play devil's advocate? Something like that." Thad straightened his uniform, "though I prefer to think of it as constructive criticism between friends." "We're not friends, Captain," Miara said, joining them in her formal military attire. "Not yet," he winked. "But the night is young." The debate began traditionally enough. Miara presented Orira's impressive defense systems with military precision: the quantum shield network, the gravity well projectors, the neural-linked response fleet. Her presentation was flawless, highlighting the technological superiority that had protected their world for centuries. When it was Thad's turn, he started with his trademark self-deprecating humor. "I admit Princess Miara's presentation was impressive, especially to someone whose species still occasionally needs to hit our computers to make them work." This earned a few chuckles from the audience. "But perhaps that primitive perspective allows us to see things differently." He pulled up a holographic display of Orira's defense grid. "Your systems are beautiful, perfect even, and therein lies the problem." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Miara's eyes narrowed. "You dare suggest perfection is a flaw?" "Not perfection itself," Thad said, his tone turning serious. "But the assumption of perfection? That's dangerous." He manipulated the display, highlighting specific nodes in the defense grid. "Your quantum shields are synchronized to an incredible degree. Your gravity wells are balanced with mathematical precision. Your neural networks operate in perfect harmony." "And this is somehow a problem," Elena called from her platform. "It is when your enemy knows exactly what to expect." Thad expanded the display. "Watch this simulation." He ran a program showing a seemingly random pattern of small impacts against the shield grid. Nothing significant, just space debris and minor meteorites. But with each impact, tiny fluctuations appeared in the shield harmonics. "Perfectly predictable systems have perfectly predictable weaknesses," he explained. "Your shields don't just block attacks, they respond to them. And because they're perfectly synchronized," realization dawned on Miara's face, "a cascading resonance pattern." Exactly. Thad showed how the small impacts, if timed precisely, could create a feedback loop in the shield harmonics. An enemy wouldn't need to overwhelm your defenses. They just need to... Use our own perfection against us, Elena finished, her golden eyes wide. The great hall erupted in concerned whispers. King Zareth leaned forward on his throne, his expression unreadable. But that's not even the clever part, Thad continued, warming to his subject. The real brilliance is in your gravity well network. It's so precisely calibrated that a sufficiently advanced enemy could actually use it to amplify their attacks. Like this. He demonstrated how the gravity wells, if manipulated properly, could be turned into a weapon against the city itself. The simulation showed crystalline spires crumbling under their own enhanced weight. This is outrageous, one of the noble counselors shouted. You expose our weaknesses in public? I expose them here, in front of your leadership and defensive forces, Thad corrected, rather than letting them be discovered by your enemies. And more importantly, he paused for effect. I can show you how to fix them. The hall fell silent. You knew all this time? Miara asked quietly. During training, when you were disrupting my combat patterns? I was demonstrating the principle, Thad nodded. Perfect systems can be predicted. Predicted systems can be defeated. But systems that can adapt, that can embrace a little chaos. He smiled at each sister in turn. Those are the ones that survive. King Zareth stood, his voice carrying across the hall. You deliberately lost this debate, Captain Blackwood. You showed us our weaknesses while appearing to fail. With respect, Your Majesty, I didn't lose anything. I simply chose to win differently. Thad bowed slightly. Earth doesn't seek to prove superiority. We seek partnership. Sometimes that means being willing to look foolish in order to help those we wish to call friends. The king's laugh was unexpected and booming. Well played, Captain. Very well played indeed. He turned to his daughters. Perhaps we have underestimated our primitive friends. And perhaps... His eyes twinkled with something that made Thad suddenly nervous. Perhaps it's time we discussed a more permanent arrangement between our worlds. The three princesses exchanged glances that suggested they knew exactly what their father was thinking. Thad managed to keep his diplomatic smile in place, but internally he wondered if he might have played his hand a little too well. Thank you, Your Majesty, he said smoothly. I look forward to exploring all possible arrangements between our worlds. But first, he turned to Miara. I believe I owe Princess Miara a chance to demonstrate how quickly Araran defense forces can adapt to new strategies. If she's willing? Miara's predatory grin returned, but there was respect in it now. Oh, I'm willing, Captain. Though this time, perhaps we can skip the dancing. Where's the fun in that? Thad winked, then turned serious. Besides, I think we've all seen today that sometimes the best path forward requires stepping out of our comfort zones. As the hall began to clear, Thad caught snippets of conversation among the nobles. Concern mixed with intrigue, fear balanced with hope. He'd accomplished his main objective, cracking the facade of Araran's superiority just enough to plant the seeds of change. Elena approached him last, her expression thoughtful. You are either the most brilliant or the most foolish human I've ever met. I aim for a healthy mix of both, Thad replied. Keeps life interesting. Indeed, she studied him carefully. You should know, Captain, that my father rarely laughs like that. And when he does, it usually means someone's life is about to become very complicated. Precisely. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. Welcome to Arira, Captain Blackwood. I suspect things are about to become very interesting indeed. As Thad watched the three sisters depart, Lieutenant Rodriguez's voice came through his communicator. Sir, was this part of the plan? Which part? Exposing their defense weaknesses, impressing the king, or making three alien princesses look at me like I'm either a genius or a madman? All of it, sir. Thad smiled, watching the last rays of the twin suns paint the crystal city in shades of gold and promise. Let's just say, Lieutenant, that Phase 1 is complete, and Phase 2... He chuckled. Well, that's where things get really interesting. The summons to the king's private chambers came at dawn. Thad found King Zareth standing before a wall-length crystal window, his silhouette framed by the rising suns. Do you know why I've called you here, Captain Blackwood? I assume it's not to admire the view, Your Majesty, Thad replied. noting the tension in the king's shoulders. Though I must say, it's spectacular. Zareth turned, his expression grave. Yesterday's demonstration revealed more than just flaws in our defenses. It revealed flaws in our society. He gestured to a holographic display showing civil unrest in various sectors of the city. Separatist factions grow bolder. They claim our perfect society has become stagnant, resistant to change. And showing those defense weaknesses didn't help, I imagine. On the contrary, the king's smile was sharp. You showed us something we desperately needed to see, the value of adaptation, which is why I have a proposition for you. I'm listening, Your Majesty. 3 trials, Captain. 1 set by each of my daughters. Pass them, and Earth will have more than just an alliance with Aurora. Thad raised an eyebrow. And if I fail, then you prove what many here believe, that humans are not ready for true partnership with advanced civilizations. No pressure, then. Thad studied the king's face. But there's more to this than testing me, isn't there? Zareth laughed softly. Perceptive. Yes, Captain. My daughters are brilliant, powerful, and utterly unprepared for the changes coming to our world. They need to learn what you already seem to understand, that perfection can be a prison. So I'm not just being tested. You're helping me test them. The king's expression turned serious. Our people need leaders who can adapt, who can bridge the gap between tradition and progress. My daughters must learn this, or Aurora may not survive the coming storms. Before Thad could respond, the chamber doors opened to admit the 3 princesses. Their formal morning attire sparkled with crystalline accents, but their expressions were all business. Father, Elena began, you summoned us? Ah, perfect timing. Zareth's voice carried across the chamber. I was just informing Captain Blackwood of his upcoming trials. Elena, you will test his technical abilities. Miara, his strategic thinking. And Lexa, his understanding of our people. The sisters exchanged glances. Miara's smile turned predatory. Any rules we should know about? Only one, the king replied. The trials must be fair, and they must be meaningful. No simple tests of strength or knowledge. I want to see what this human is truly capable of. And what do we get if he fails? Elena asked, her golden eyes fixed on Thad. The satisfaction of proving your initial assessments correct? Thad suggested with a grin. Though I should warn you, I'm surprisingly stubborn for a primitive being. You'll need more than stubbornness, Elena said coolly. My test will begin in 2 hours. I suggest you prepare yourself. As the sisters departed, Thad turned back to the king. You're playing a dangerous game, Your Majesty. We all are, Captain. Zareth's expression was unreadable. The question is, are you ready to play your part? Thad's smile didn't waver. I was born ready, Your Majesty, though I might need a cup of coffee first. 2 hours later, Thad found himself in Elena's private laboratory, surrounded by technology that made Earth's most advanced systems look like children's toys. The eldest princess stood before a massive holographic display, her usual regal demeanor enhanced by her scientist's attire. Your task is simple, she began. Our quantum communication network has developed anomalies we cannot explain. Fix them. Just like that, Thad examined the scrolling data. No hints? No parameters? You claimed Earth achieved faster-than-light communication. Prove it wasn't just boasting. Thad noticed something in the data stream, a pattern that shouldn't be there. Interesting. Your network isn't just experiencing anomalies. It's evolving. Elena's eyes narrowed. Impossible. The system is perfectly calibrated. There's that word again. Perfect. Thad manipulated the display, highlighting subtle variations in the quantum signatures. Look here. Your network isn't breaking down. It's trying to establish new connections on its own. That's not possible without thinking outside traditional patterns? Thad pulled out his datapad, connecting it to her system. Watch this. He introduced a simple Earth protocol into the quantum stream. Instead of trying to control the anomalies, it gave them structured freedom to develop. What are you doing? Elena moved closer, her shoulder brushing against his as she studied the display. Something primitive, Thad said softly. Sometimes the best solution isn't forcing order onto chaos, but helping chaos find its own order. The quantum network pulsed with new energy, patterns shifting and reforming in ways Elena had never seen before. Her golden eyes widened as understanding dawned. It's learning, she breathed. The network is actually learning. Just like your defense systems, Thad nodded. Perfect systems can be predicted. But a system that can adapt, that can grow. He turned to face her, suddenly aware of how close they were standing. That's truly perfect. Elena met his gaze, her usual cold demeanor cracking slightly. How did you know this would work? I didn't. But sometimes you have to trust that chaos has its own wisdom. He grinned. Plus, I'm really good at breaking things in interesting ways. You're impossible, she muttered, but there was a hint of admiration in her voice. Impossibly charming? Impossibly primitive, she corrected, but her lips curved in a slight smile. Though, perhaps, not entirely without merit. The laboratory door slid open, revealing Miara in full battle gear. If you're done flirting with our primitive guest, sister, it's my turn. We weren't flirting, Elena said quickly, stepping away from Thad. We were discussing quantum mechanics. Is that what they're calling it now? Miara's smile was wicked. Come, Captain. Let's see if you can be as innovative in combat as you are in quantum mechanics. The combat simulation chamber was a massive space filled with holographic projectors. Miara stood at the control console, programming parameters. Your task is simple, she said. Defend a civilian settlement against superior forces. You'll command a small defensive fleet against my attack force. Let me guess. You have better ships, better weapons, and better tactics. Naturally. She activated the simulation. Begin. The space around them transformed into a star system. A small colony world hung vulnerable in space, defended by a modest fleet under Thad's command. Miara's forces appeared on the edge of the system, a massive armada of advanced warships. Interesting choice of scenario, Thad noted, studying the tactical display. Personal experience? Miara's expression flickered. Focus on the simulation, Captain. The battle began. Miara's forces moved with precise, devastating efficiency, but instead of trying to match her tactics, Thad did something unexpected. He positioned his ships in seemingly random patterns, using the colony's orbital infrastructure in ways that defied conventional strategy. What are you doing? Miara demanded, as another of her attacks failed to connect. Dancing, Thad replied, redirecting power from his weapons to shields. Care to join me? This isn't a game. Isn't it? He showed her the tactical display. Look at your troops' formation. Perfect. Predictable. Just like in our training session. Understanding dawned in her eyes. You're using my own precision against me. Again. Not just that. Thad highlighted a section of her fleet. I'm showing you something about your command style. You're so focused on winning that you're sacrificing ships unnecessarily. Victory at any cost? Sometimes sacrifice is necessary, she said, but there was uncertainty in her voice. Is it? Watch this. Thad reorganized his fleet, creating deliberate gaps in his defense. As Miara's forces moved to exploit them, he sprung his trap, not to destroy her ships, but to protect them from a solar flare she hadn't noticed. You sacrificed your tactical advantage to save my troops? Some victories aren't worth the cost, Thad said quietly. A true leader protects not just their own people, but anyone they can. Miara stared at the display for a long moment. You could have won. I did win, he smiled. Just not the way you expected. The simulation faded, leaving them standing in the empty chamber. Miara's expression was thoughtful. You continue to surprise, Captain. I live to serve your highness and to surprise. Mostly to surprise. Indeed. She stepped closer, her warrior's grace making the movement seem almost predatory. Tell me, do you approach everything as a dance? Only the important thing, he replied, matching her intensity. War, diplomacy, quantum mechanics, flirting? I would never presume to flirt with a superior officer, Thad said solemnly, then winked. Unless, of course, she started it. Miara laughed, the sound echoing through the chamber. You are either very brave or very foolish. So I keep hearing, though I prefer to think of it as diplomatically adventurous. Before she could respond, Lexa appeared at the chamber entrance. My turn, she announced, her usual shy demeanor replaced by quiet determination. And Captain, you might want to change into something less formal. Oh, Thad raised an eyebrow. Should I be worried? Let's just say, Lexa smiled mysteriously, we're going to see how well you dance with common people. Lexa's test took them to the lower levels of the Crystal City, where the gleaming spires gave way to more modest structures. Here, the perfect facade of Oriran society showed its cracks, both literally and figuratively. Welcome to the real Orira, Lexa said, leading them through crowded streets. She'd changed into simpler clothing, though she couldn't quite hide her royal bearing. Your task is to help solve a problem that's been plaguing this district. And what problem would that be? Thad asked, noting how people cleared a path for them while trying to appear like they weren't. You tell me. Lex's smile was challenging. That's part of the test. They spent the next hour walking the district. Thad noticed everything. The subtle flaws in the crystal structures, the way people gathered in whispered groups, the tension in the air. But most importantly, he noticed how they looked at Lexa, with a mixture of hope and resignation. Your people don't expect anything to change, he said finally, stopping at a small marketplace. They've seen royal visits before, promises made and forgotten. Lexa's expression tightened. Is that your assessment of the problem? No. Thad moved closer, lowering his voice. That's the symptom. The problem is up there. He pointed to the gleaming spires above. Your perfect society has created an invisible wall, and you, Princess, are just as trapped by it as they are. Careful, Captain, she warned, but there was something vulnerable in her eyes. You're treading dangerous ground. Story of my life. He grinned, then turned serious. But I'm right, aren't I? You bring visiting diplomats here, hoping someone will finally see what you see. Before she could respond, a commotion broke out nearby. A group of children had been playing with a makeshift anti-gravity device, and it was malfunctioning dangerously. Stay back, Lexa commanded, reaching for her royal communicator. But Thad was already moving. He approached the panicking children, his voice calm and friendly. Hey there! That's a pretty cool toy you've got. Mind if I take a look? The children, too scared to remember their awe of outsiders, nodded frantically. Thad examined the device, whistling appreciatively. Nice work on the modifications, but you've got your polarity reversed. Here. He made a few adjustments, explaining as he worked. See? Sometimes the simplest solution is just looking at things from a different angle. The device stabilized, settling gently to the ground. The children stared at him in wonder. You fixed it, one of them exclaimed. But you're just a primitive. Hey now, Thad feigned offense. I prefer the term creatively basic. Besides, he winked at Lexa, sometimes being primitive means you learn to fix things instead of replacing them. A crowd had gathered, watching the interaction. Thad noticed how they were looking at Lexa now, not just with hope, but with curiosity. Your Highness, one of the children's mothers stepped forward hesitantly, Would you like to see what else we've modified? We've had to adapt many things since we can't afford the newer models. Lexa's eyes met Thad's, understanding dawning. I would love to, she said softly. Please show me everything. The next few hours were a revelation. Thad watched as Lexa engaged with her people, really saw them for the first time. They showed her their innovations, their adaptations, their ways of making do. And in each case, Thad helped bridge the gap between royal expectations and common ingenuity. You did this deliberately, Lexa accused him later, as they walked back toward the palace. You turned my test into a lesson. Did I? Thad's expression was innocent. I thought I was just being helpfully primitive. Stop that, she said, but she was smiling. Stop making everything into a joke. Would you prefer I make it into a dance? He offered his arm gallantly. Though I should warn you, I'm much better at fixing anti-gravity devices than I am at formal court dancing. Lexa took his arm, her touch surprisingly warm. You're doing it again, using humor to deflect from the fact that you're actually quite clever. Guilty as charged. He glanced down at her. Though I might say the same about you, Princess. You use shyness the way I use humor, to hide how much you really see. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the pretenses dropped away. Then Lexa quickly looked ahead, though she didn't remove her arm from his. My sisters won't be pleased, she said finally. You've passed all our tests, but not in any way we expected. Story of my life, Thad chuckled. Though I have to admit, your test was particularly clever. Making me solve a problem I had to identify first? That's almost primitive in its elegance. Was that a compliment or an insult? Yes, Lexa laughed, the sound carrying through the evening air. Above them, the twin suns were setting, painting the crystal city in shades of gold and promise. But this time, Thad noticed, the beauty reached all the way down to the lower levels. You've changed things, Lexa said quietly. In just one day, you've made people think differently, about themselves, about us. About the meaning of perfection, Thad suggested. Sometimes the most perfect things are the ones with visible flaws. They show us where we can grow. Before Lexa could respond, an explosion rocked the district behind them. Thad spun, pushing her behind him instinctively. It seems, Lexa's voice was grim, that not everyone appreciates change. No, Thad agreed, already moving them toward cover as he activated his communicator. But that's the thing about change, Princess. Once it starts, he gave her a fierce grin. It tends to get interesting really quickly. The explosion had come from the marketplace they just left. Thad and Lexa raced back, finding chaos where harmony had been moments before. Smoke rose from shattered crystal structures, and panicked citizens scattered in all directions. Lieutenant Rodriguez, Thad barked into his communicator. Code red. I need a security sweep of the lower district now. Already on it, sir, came the swift reply. Multiple hostiles detected. They're using some kind of cloaking technology. Lexa's own communicator crackled to life. Sister, Miara's voice was urgent. We're tracking multiple breaches in the city's security grid. The same weaknesses the captain exposed. They're using my analysis against us, Thad finished grimly. Clever and terrible timing. On the contrary, Elena's voice joined the channel, their timing is deliberate. They waited until we were distracted by the trials. The air shimmered nearby, and 3 figures materialized. Separatist fighters. Their armor a corrupted version of Araran military gear. They raised weapons, but Thad was already moving. Down! He tackled Lexa behind a fallen crystal column as energy bolts sizzled past. Please tell me your combat training wasn't just theoretical, Princess. Lexa pulled a slim device from her sleeve that expanded into an energy shield. I'm full of surprises, Captain. Aren't we all? Thad grinned, pulling out his own primitive weapon, a modified Earth Pulse pistol. Care to dance? They moved together with surprising synchronization. Lexa's shield provided cover while Thad's shots forced the attackers back. But more were appearing, using the chaos to mask their approach. The civilians! Lexa gasped between exchanges. They're trapped in the marketplace. Then let's give them a way out, Thad keyed his communicator. Elena, remember that quantum network modification we made? Can you replicate it citywide? Already working on it, came her swift reply. But it will take time to... No time. Just focus on this district. Use the chaos pattern we discovered. Trust me. Moments later, the air hummed with quantum energy. The Separatists' cloaking devices flickered and failed as the network adapted to their frequency. Miara, Thad called out. Remember our little dance in the simulation? Time to make it real. Already here, Captain. Miara descended from above on an anti-gravity platform, her combat suit gleaming. She moved with lethal grace, her earlier predatory smile now turned on real enemies. The marketplace is secure, she announced, landing beside them. But we have a bigger problem. These aren't just separatists. They're using royal security codes. A traitor in the court, Lexa whispered. That's how they knew about the defense weaknesses. Not just one traitor, Elena's voice was grim. I'm detecting multiple unauthorized access points. This goes deep into our power structure. Thad's mind raced. Your father knew, he realized. The trials weren't just about testing us. They were about exposing who would take advantage of the disruption. Very good, Captain, a new voice purred. High Counselor Venn stepped from the shadows, flanked by more separatist fighters. Though I prefer to think of it as strategic reorganization. Let me guess, Thad drawled. positioning himself subtly between the counselor and the princesses. You couldn't stand watching your perfect society consider change? Change, Ven spat the word. You mean weakness, contamination from primitive species like yours. We built perfection, and you dare suggest we need to adapt? Considering your cloaking tech just failed, Thad pointed out cheerfully, I'd say adaptation might not be such a bad idea. Enough! Ven raised his hand, and his fighters took aim. Kill them all. The royal line ends tonight. Several things happened at once. Lexa's shield expanded to cover all three of them. Miara launched herself at the nearest attackers. And Thad started laughing. What's so funny, Primitive? Ven demanded. Oh, just appreciating the irony, Thad grinned. You were so focused on being perfect, you forgot to check if the quantum network was still transmitting. Ven's eyes widened as he realized his mistake. Every word, every action had been broadcast throughout the city, including to the Royal Guard. The air shimmered again, but this time it was royal forces materializing. Led by Elena herself, they quickly surrounded the separatists. Surrender, Counselor, Elena commanded, her golden eyes blazing. Your perfect plan just crashed into some primitive chaos. The fighting was brief but intense. When it ended, Ven and his conspirators were in custody, and the true scope of their betrayal was becoming clear. They had supporters throughout the upper city, Miara reported, cleaning her energy blade. All of them obsessed with maintaining our perfect society. Perfection, Thad mused, helping a shaken citizen to their feet, is highly overrated. Give me beautiful chaos any day. Like your fighting style? Lexa teased, deactivating her shield. Like everything worth doing, he winked. Speaking of which, he turned to face all three sisters. I believe I've passed your trials, albeit in unexpected ways. You exposed a conspiracy, Elena noted. Saved countless lives, Miara added. And showed us how blind we've been to our own people, Lexa finished softly. So, Thad spread his hands. Do I get a passing grade? The sisters exchanged looks. Then to his surprise, they laughed. Not the polite court laughs he'd heard before, but genuine joyful sound. You, Elena said, stepping close, are impossible. Reckless, Miara added, moving to his other side. And entirely too pleased with yourself, Lexa completed the circle. But, they said in unison, you passed. Excellent, Thad beamed. So, about that alliance. Oh no, King Zareth's voice cut through the moment. He stood nearby, surveying the aftermath with a mixture of pride and calculation. The trials were just the beginning, Captain. Now comes the truly interesting part. Thad looked between the king's enigmatic smile and the suddenly suspicious expressions of the three princesses. Why do I get the feeling I should have quit while I was ahead? Because, Captain Blackwood, the king's eyes twinkled with mischief. While you were busy saving our world and charming my daughters, you gave me a rather brilliant idea about how to ensure lasting peace between our peoples. All three princesses suddenly stiffened, realization dawning on their faces. Thad, for perhaps the first time since arriving on Orira, felt completely out of his depth. Your Majesty? He asked cautiously. We'll discuss it tomorrow, Zareth said cheerfully. For now, celebrate your victory. After all, he looked meaningfully at his daughters. The real challenge is about to begin. As the king departed, Thad turned to the sisters. Should I be worried? Terrified, they answered in unison, but their smiles suggested they might not mind whatever their father was planning. Well then, Thad offered his arms to Elena and Lexa, while bowing playfully to Miara. Shall we go face our doom together? And as they made their way back to the palace, with the twin suns setting on a city forever changed, Thad couldn't help but think that sometimes the most perfect moments were the ones you never saw coming. The morning after the failed separatist attack, Thad stood in the Grand Council chamber, trying not to fidget as King Zareth addressed the assembled nobility. The three princesses stood nearby, their formal attire gleaming in the early sunlight. Yesterday's events, Zareth's voice carried through the chamber, proved two things. First, that our perfect society has cracks we can no longer ignore. And second, he smiled mysteriously, that sometimes the most elegant solutions come from unexpected places. Thad caught Elena's slight eye roll and had to suppress a grin. Whatever the king was planning, at least one princess was already skeptical. Therefore, Zareth continued, I propose a solution that will both strengthen our alliance with Earth and ensure Arira's future. He paused for dramatic effect. Captain Blackwood will marry my daughters. The chamber erupted in chaos. Thad choked on air. All three princesses froze in perfect, identical expressions of shock. I'm sorry, Thad managed finally. Could you repeat that? My primitive ears must be malfunctioning. All three of my daughters, Zareth repeated cheerfully. A triple marriage to bind our worlds together. Father, Elena's voice could have frozen plasma. You cannot be serious. Actually, Miara said thoughtfully, it's strategically sound. The Separatists would have a harder time challenging united royal houses. Don't help, Lexa hissed at her sister. Thad's mind raced. This had to be another test, another layer of the king's game. But before he could speak, alarms blared throughout the palace. Multiple breaches detected, a guard captain shouted. The Separatists, they're back. Impossible, Miara snarled, drawing her weapon. We captured their leadership. Did we? Thad was already moving, pulling up security feeds on his datapad. Or did we catch the ones they wanted us to catch? Explosions rocked the palace. The crystal walls, usually so pristine, began to crack under coordinated attacks. The command center, Elena said suddenly. We need to get to the ancient command center. It's the most secure location in the palace. And the most defensible, Miara agreed. Lead the way, Thad gestured. We can discuss your father's interesting proposal after we survive this. They fought their way through chaos-filled corridors, Miara's combat skills and Lexa's shield technology, keeping them alive while Elena guided them through secret passages. Thad covered their rear, his primitive weapon proving surprisingly effective against Araran armor. You know, he called out between firefights, this isn't exactly how I imagined meeting my potential in-laws. Still making jokes? Elena shot back, but her smile was genuine. Always, it's one of my most charming qualities. Among so many to choose from, Lexa teased, expanding her shield to deflect another attack. They finally reached the command center, an ancient chamber deep within the palace's heart. As the heavy doors sealed behind them, Thad whistled at the array of technology before them. Now this, he said appreciatively, is what I call a control room. The ancient command center hummed with power, its crystalline interfaces pulsing with energy. But what caught Thad's attention wasn't the technology. It was how the three princesses immediately moved to different stations, each instinctively taking their natural roles. Elena's fingers danced across quantum interfaces, her golden eyes reflecting streams of data. The Separatists have taken control of most defense systems. They're using our own security protocols against us. Just like last time, Miara growled, pulling up tactical displays. But their attack pattern is different. More desperate. More ... She paused, frowning. Primitive, Thad suggested, moving to study the display. They're learning, adapting our weaknesses against us. Like someone else we know, Lexa said softly, monitoring communication channels. The people are panicking. The lower districts are in chaos. Thad watched the sisters work, an idea forming. You know what's interesting? Each of you immediately knew exactly where you were needed. No discussion, no planning. We were trained for this, Elena said absently, still focused on her screens. Were you? Or did you each naturally gravitate to what you do best? He moved to the center of the room. Elena, you understand the systems better than anyone. Miara, you see patterns in chaos. Lexa, you hear the voice of the people. And me? He grinned. I'm just primitive enough to suggest something crazy. All three sisters turned to look at him. What are you thinking, Captain? Miara asked, her tone suggesting she already knew she wouldn't like it. Your father's ridiculous marriage proposal? He wasn't just being dramatic. He was showing us something. Thad activated the central holographic display. Look at how we work together, each with different strengths, different perspectives. Apart, we're vulnerable, but together we're stronger than the sum of our parts, Elena finished, understanding dawning in her eyes. Exactly. So instead of trying to fight the Separatists with perfect Araran precision, we fight them with chaos. Miara grinned fiercely. with unpredictability. With adaptation, Lexa added, her quiet voice carrying new strength. Thad's smile was brilliant. Ladies, shall we show them how primitive we can be? What followed was unlike anything in Araran military history. Elena used her quantum networks not to control, but to create controlled chaos, disrupting separatist communications with random bursts of Earth-style static. Miara abandoned perfect tactical formations for fluid, unpredictable patterns that left the enemy confused and divided. Lexa reached out to the people, not with royal commands but with honest communication, turning panic into coordinated resistance. And Thad? Thad danced between them all, suggesting impossible ideas that somehow worked, cracking jokes that kept them focused, and slowly but surely helping them forge a new kind of harmony. You know, he said during a brief lull, this is actually a pretty good first date. Date? Elena arched an eyebrow. We're fighting for the survival of our world. Exactly. Dinner and dancing would have been so boring in comparison. You, Miara pointed her energy blade at him, but her eyes sparkled, are impossible. So I've been told, multiple times, usually by beautiful women trying to kill me. We're not trying to kill you, Lexa said sweetly. Yet, see? Progress. A massive explosion rocked the palace above them. Tactical displays showed the separatists had breached the upper levels. They're heading for the throne room, Miara reported grimly. If they take it, symbolically, then we take it back, Thad said firmly. But not the way they expect. He outlined his plan quickly. It was crazy, reckless, and completely un-Araran. The sisters loved it. If we die, Elena told him as they prepared to move, I'm going to kill you. Fair enough, he winked at her. But if we live? She answered with a kiss that left him momentarily speechless. When she pulled back, her sisters were staring. What? She demanded. Someone had to shut him up eventually. Miara laughed. And here I thought I'd have to do it with my blade. I was planning to use my shield, Lexa admitted, blushing slightly. Ladies, Thad said once he recovered his voice. I am both terrified and intrigued by all of these options, but perhaps we should save this fascinating discussion for after we save your kingdom? The plan worked beautifully in its chaotic perfection. Using Elena's quantum manipulations, they made the separatists believe the throne room was vulnerable from above. Meanwhile, Miara's unconventional tactics drew their forces thin, and Lexa's connection with the people created a citywide resistance that caught the enemy completely off guard. As they fought their way back to the throne room, Thad found himself in an increasingly complex dance with the three princesses. Each moment of danger seemed to draw them closer, breaking down the walls of formality and pretense. Behind you, Elena called, sending a quantum pulse that scattered their attackers. The way she moved to protect him was automatic now, natural. Thanks, darling, Thad quipped, spinning to cover her flank. You're getting quite good at saving this primitive's life. Someone has to, she replied, but her smile held warmth that had nothing to do with combat. Miara vaulted over them both, her energy blade creating patterns of light that were more art than warfare. Less flirting, more fighting. Can't we do both? Thad asked innocently. I'm excellent at multitasking. Is that your way of addressing Father's proposal? Lexa teased, her shield expanding to cover them all as they moved through a particularly exposed corridor. Actually, Thad's voice turned serious for a moment. I've been thinking about that. All three sisters tensed slightly, though they never stopped moving. And, Elena's tone was carefully neutral, and I think your father is both brilliant and completely mad. He paused to take out two separatists with precise shots, but mostly brilliant. Explain, Miara demanded, dancing past him with lethal grace. Look at us right now, working together, adapting, creating something new. He gestured at their synchronized movement. But it's not just about combat or politics. It's about change, Lexa finished softly. Real change. Exactly. Thad's eyes met each of theirs in turn. Your father knew that true alliance couldn't come from traditional diplomacy. It needed something more personal. More primitive, Elena suggested, but her tone was fond. I was going to say human, but yes, he grinned. The question is, What kind of change are we really looking for? They reached the throne room's secret entrance, pausing for a moment before the final push. The air between them crackled with more than just combat energy. I know what I'm looking for, Elena said suddenly, her golden eyes intense. Someone who challenges everything I thought I knew about perfection. I want a partner who understands that true strength comes from adaptation, not rigid control, Miara added, her warrior's stance softening slightly. Lexa stepped forward, her usual shyness replaced by quiet certainty. I need someone who sees the real person behind the royal facade. Thad looked between them, his heart doing interesting things in his chest. Ladies, if I didn't know better, I'd say you were all proposing to me. Maybe we are, Elena said, just not all in the same way. Understanding dawned in his eyes. Your father's plan was never about a triple marriage, Miara confirmed. It was about letting us choose our own paths, while creating unbreakable bonds between our worlds, Lexa added. So, Thad said slowly, while we're about to storm the throne room and save your kingdom, would this be a bad time to mention I've fallen completely in love with one of you? All three sisters smiled, but it was Elena who stepped forward, taking his face in her hands. Horrible timing, she said softly. Absolutely primitive. And then she kissed him again, this time with no pretense of shutting him up. When they parted, Miara was smirking and Lexa was beaming. Well, Miara said, that settles that. Though I expect you to keep dancing with me in the training room, Captain. And helping me with the people, Lexa added, as my new brother-in-law. Ladies, Thad said, his voice rough with emotion, it would be my honor. But first, he nodded toward the throne room doors. Shall we go make history? The final battle was spectacular in its controlled chaos. The Separatists, expecting traditional Araran tactics, were completely unprepared for the combination of Earth's adaptability and Araira's power. Elena's quantum manipulations created impossible patterns. Miara's combat style had evolved into something entirely new, and Lexa's connection to the people turned the tide as citizens and nobles fought side by side. And through it all, Thad and Elena moved as one, their strengths complementing each other in perfect imperfection. When the dust settled, the Separatists were defeated, the kingdom was saved, and a new era had begun. King Zareth found them in the aftermath, surveying the damage to the throne room. His smile was knowing. I see you've all figured it out, he said, looking between them. You manipulative old starlight, Elena said fondly. You planned this all along. I merely created the opportunity, Zareth replied. You did the rest yourselves. He turned to Thad. Though I must admit, Captain, I didn't expect you to charm all three of my daughters in quite such different ways. What can I say, Your Majesty? Thad pulled Elena closer while smiling at her sisters. I'm primitively talented. The wedding, when it came, was a blend of Earth and Araran traditions. Elena wore a dress that somehow incorporated quantum crystals into Earth silk, while Thad managed to make his formal uniform look both dignified and slightly roguish. Miara served as honor guard, her new combat school already teaching the combined styles they'd developed. Lexa officiated, her natural connection to people making her the perfect bridge between cultures. You know, Thad said during their first dance, holding his wife close, when I first came here, I thought success would mean changing Araira. And instead, Elena asked, her golden eyes bright with happiness, instead we changed each other. He spun her under the crystal lights. Though I still say Earth's primitive ways have a certain charm. Keep telling yourself that, dear, she laughed. Though I must admit, some primitive things have grown on me. Oh, like what? She pulled him down for a kiss that made the assembled crowd cheer and her sisters whoop appreciatively. Like that, she whispered against his lips. Later, as they watched the twin suns set from their private balcony, Miara and Lexa joined them with glasses of crystalline wine. To new beginnings, Miara proposed. To family, Lexa added. To perfect imperfection, Elena said, leaning into her husband's embrace. To the most beautiful chaos in the galaxy, Thad finished, looking at his wife and sisters-in-law with deep affection. And as night fell over the crystal city, now more vibrant and alive than ever before, they laughed together about primitive customs and perfect societies, about quantum mechanics and combat dancing, about all the ways love could bridge the gaps between worlds. It wasn't the ending anyone had expected when a human diplomat first arrived on Orira. It was better. It was real. It was perfectly, beautifully imperfect. During the wedding preparations, Lieutenant Kayla Rodriguez found herself increasingly withdrawn from the celebrations. She stood at her post in the palace gardens, watching Thad and Elena discuss quantum crystalline flower arrangements with what could only be described as nauseating enthusiasm. "Something troubling you, Lieutenant?" Miara's voice startled her from her thoughts. "Not at all, Your Highness." Kayla straightened, trying to mask her emotions. "Just maintaining security protocols." Miara's warrior instincts caught the subtle tension in her voice. "You know, for someone who's served with Captain Blackwood for 3 years, you don't seem particularly happy about his marriage." Kayla's jaw tightened. "My feelings are irrelevant to my duties?" "Ah," Miara's expression softened with understanding. "You love him too." I dot. Kayla started to deny it, then sighed. Was I that obvious? Only to someone who knows what it looks like to watch the person you care about fall in love with someone else. Before Kayla could respond, Thad approached them, his face lit with his usual infectious grin. "Ladies, just the two I was looking for. Kayla, I need your help with something." "Of course, sir," Kayla replied stiffly. "What do you require?" Thad's smile faltered slightly at her formal tone. "Are you all right? You've been distant lately." "I'm fine, sir. Just focused on security." "Kayla," he said softly, using her first name in a way that made her heart ache. "We've been through too much together for this formality. What's wrong?" Miara tactfully excused herself, leaving them alone in the garden. "You want to know what's wrong?" Kayla finally snapped, years of buried feelings surfacing. "I've watched your back for 3 years, been there through every crazy mission, every diplomatic crisis. I thought—" She stopped, collecting herself. "I thought eventually you'd see me as more than just your lieutenant." Understanding dawned in Thad's eyes, followed by genuine pain. "Kayla, don't," she cut him off. "Don't say you're sorry. Don't say you had no idea, just ... She squared her shoulders. "Just let me do my job, sir." "You're not just my lieutenant," Thad said firmly. "You're one of my closest friends. Someone I trust with my life. Someone who's seen me at my best and worst." "But not someone you love," she said quietly. "Not the way you deserve to be loved," he corrected gently. "You deserve someone who sees you first, not someone whose heart was captured by quantum mechanics and golden eyes." Despite herself, Kayla laughed wetly. "You and your terrible timing, falling for an alien princess?" "Technically, she fell for my primitive charm," he grinned, then turned serious. "I need you to know something. My trust in you, our friendship, that's real. And if you need time or space—" "No," she straightened. "No, I'm a professional, and—" She managed a small smile. "And you're right. I deserve someone who sees me first." "Lieutenant Rodriguez," Lex's voice called out, "I require your assistance with something rather urgent." They turned to see the youngest princess approaching with a mysterious smile. "Duty calls," Kayla said, starting to move away. "Kayla," Thad caught her arm gently. "Thank you. For everything. Just—" She looked back at him. "Just be happy, okay? And don't let all this perfection change you too much. Some of us actually like your primitive ways." As she walked away with Lexa, Thad watched thoughtfully. He didn't notice Elena approaching until she slipped her arm through his. "You handled that well," his fiancée observed. "You knew." "Of course I knew. I'm perfect, remember?" She smiled at his laugh. "She'll be all right, especially once she realizes why Lexa specifically requested her help with diplomatic security training." Thad raised an eyebrow. "Playing matchmaker, my love? Let's just say some of your primitive romantic tendencies might be rubbing off on all of us." As they watched Lexa and Kayla walk away, deep in conversation, Thad pulled Elena closer. "Have I mentioned lately how much I love you?" Not in the last hour. How terribly primitive of you to neglect such important communications." "Well then," he turned to face her, eyes twinkling, "allow me to rectify that oversight in the most primitive way possible." Their kiss drew good-natured jeers from passing guards and a loud, "Get a room!" from Miara. But neither of them cared. They were too busy proving that sometimes the most perfect moments were the ones you never saw coming. The royal wedding blended the grandeur of Aurora with Earth's warmth. The Crystal Palace's grand hall transformed into something magical, where floating quantum lights danced with traditional Earth flowers, and classical Earth music merged with Auroran harmonics. Nervous? Miara asked, adjusting Thad's formal uniform collar. Terrified, he admitted cheerfully, but in a good way. Like that time you almost decapitated me in training? That was yesterday, she deadpanned. Exactly. And look how well that turned out. Lexa hurried over, her ceremonial robes flowing. Elena's ready, and she looks... She paused, searching for words. Perfect? Thad suggested. Actually, Lexa smiled. Perfectly imperfect. She added some Earth traditions to her dress that would scandalize half the court. That's my girl, he grinned. The ceremony itself was a beautiful chaos. Elena appeared in a dress that somehow incorporated quantum crystals into Earth silk, with a very non-traditional Earth leather jacket over it all. The traditional Auroran vows were punctuated by Earth jokes that made the stuffy nobles gasp and the common citizens cheer. I promise, Thad said during his vows, to love you in all your perfect imperfection, to dance with you through quantum fields and common streets, and to always, always make you laugh at the worst possible moments. And I promise, Elena replied, her golden eyes shining, to love you in all your primitive glory, to adapt with you through every challenge, and to pretend I don't find your terrible jokes charming. After the celebration, as guests danced and drank crystalline wine, Thad pulled his new wife aside onto a private balcony. So, he said, wrapping his arms around her, I have a proposition for you. Another one? She raised an eyebrow. The last one ended in marriage. Even better. His eyes twinkled. How would you like to visit Earth? Now? In the middle of our political transition? Why not? Your sisters have things well in hand here. Miara's combat school is thriving, Lex's reforms are making real change, and, he grinned wickedly, I want to introduce you to something called a cheeseburger. A what? Trust me, it's the pinnacle of primitive cuisine. Completely illogical, absolutely unhealthy, and utterly perfect. Elena studied his face, then laughed. You're serious? You want to take me to Earth to eat processed food? Among other things, he pulled her closer, I want to show you my world the way you've shown me yours. All its beautiful imperfections, its chaos, its joy. He kissed her softly. Plus, I really want to see your face when you try a milkshake. A shake? Of milk? She looked horrified and intrigued. See? Already working. He spun her playfully. Come on, my perfectly imperfect princess. Let me show you how the primitives live. Well, she pretended to consider it. I suppose it is my diplomatic duty to understand Earth culture better. Absolutely. Very serious diplomatic mission. Nothing at all to do with me wanting to show off my brilliant, beautiful alien wife to everyone I know. And nothing to do with you missing what you called real coffee? That too. He kissed her again. So? What do you say? Ready for another adventure? Elena's answer was to pull him down for a deeper kiss, one that made passing servants blush, and Miara shout, Get a room! From somewhere inside. I'll take that as a yes, Thad murmured against her lips. Yes, she laughed, but if these burgers of cheese make me sick, I'm declaring war on Earth. Fair enough. He twirled her back toward the celebration. Though something tells me you're going to love them almost as much as you love me. Primitive optimism? Always, he grinned. It's one of my most charming qualities. And as they rejoined their guests, both knew that this was just the beginning of their adventures together. After all, the galaxy was full of wonders to explore, traditions to blend, and perfectly imperfect moments to create. Plus, Thad really couldn't wait to see Elena's face when she discovered hot sauce. The farewell gathering in the palace's landing bay was filled with both tears and laughter. Miara tried to maintain her warrior's stoicism, but even she hugged Thad fiercely. Take care of my sister, Primitive, she warned with a smile, and bring her back in one piece. No promises, he grinned. Earth's gravity might take some getting used to. Lexa stood with Lieutenant Kayla Rodriguez, their hands subtly intertwined. The youngest princess had found an unexpected connection with the Earth officer, their shared dedication to protecting others, bridging cultural divides. "You'll stay?" Thad asked Kayla softly. "Someone needs to maintain Earth's security presence here," she replied with a genuine smile. "Besides," she glanced at Lexa, "I've found my own reason to embrace Araran culture." The royal ship awaited them, its crystalline hull gleaming. As Thad and Elena made their final goodbyes, King Zareth approached. "Remember," he said quietly, "this journey is about more than just diplomacy. It's about building bridges between our worlds. In trying Earth cuisine," Thad added cheerfully, "very serious diplomatic matter." Once aboard, as the ship broke atmosphere, Thad led Elena to the observation deck. The twin suns painted Aurora in farewell colors below them. "Having second thoughts?" he asked softly. "About leaving?" "No." She turned to him, golden eyes bright. "About spending uninterrupted time with my impossible human husband? Perhaps? Impossible in a good way, I hope." Her answer was to pull him close, their first truly private moment since becoming husband and wife. The journey to Earth would take several days, plenty of time for them to begin their new life together, sharing both tender moments and playful banter about primitive and perfect ways of showing affection. Back on Aurora, Kayla watched the ship disappear into the stars, Lexa's hand warm in hers. "They'll be fine," Lexa assured her. "After all, they have something we're all still learning about." "What's that?" "The perfect balance between order and chaos." The ship's private quarters were a blend of Araran luxury and Earth practicality, much like their relationship. Crystal lights dimmed to a soft glow as Thad and Elena stood somewhat awkwardly, both suddenly shy despite their usual confidence. "So," Thad broke the silence, "is this when you tell me about secret Araran marriage customs I should know about?" Elena's laugh broke the tension. "Worried about some mysterious royal protocol?" "Always." He stepped closer, tucking a strand of her silver hair behind her ear. "Though I'm more worried about disappointing my perfect wife." "I thought we agreed," she murmured, leaning into his touch, "that perfect is overrated." "In that case," he pulled her closer, his voice softening, "may I kiss my beautifully imperfect wife?" Their kiss was different from their previous ones, unhurried, exploring, full of promise. The quantum crystals in Elena's dress hummed softly in response to her heightened emotions. "Your heart's racing," she whispered against his lips. "I can feel the quantum resonance." "That's not quantum science," he smiled. "That's just what you do to me." She traced his face with gentle fingers. "Show me," she said softly, "how primitives express love." "With pleasure," he replied, drawing her into another kiss. "Though I should warn you, Earth customs can be quite passionate. Good thing I've developed a taste for primitive things." The crystal lights dimmed further, casting the room in starlight as they discovered each new way they fit together, perfectly in their imperfection. Later, wrapped in quantum silk sheets, Elena traced patterns on his chest. "I think," she said thoughtfully, "I understand now why Earth poetry often mentions stars." "Oh?" Thad pulled her closer, dropping a kiss on her silver hair. "Everything feels infinite, like floating in space, but anchored by something stronger than gravity." "That," he chuckled, "was surprisingly poetic for a quantum scientist. Must be your primitive influence rubbing off on me." They lay in comfortable silence, watching the stars streak past their viewport, two worlds apart, but somehow fitting together just right. "I love you," Thad said simply, "in every possible version of reality. Even the primitive ones," she teased, "especially those." He kissed her again, soft and sweet. "Though I have to warn you, Earth gravity is going to feel very strange after this." Her laugh echoed through their quarters, a sound of pure joy that made the quantum crystals sing in harmony. "Worth it," she decided, curling closer. "Everything about you is worth it." And as they drifted to sleep in each other's arms, the ship carried them toward Earth and all the adventures awaiting them there. Perfect and primitive, bound together by something stronger than any force in the galaxy, love in all its beautifully chaotic forms. Dear fellow adventurers, through this tale of love, diplomacy, and quantum mechanics, you've journeyed with Thad Blackwood through his remarkable adventure on Orira, watching him navigate not just interstellar politics, but the hearts of three extraordinary princesses. Each sister brought something unique to the story. Elena, the brilliant quantum scientist with golden eyes and a sharp wit, who learned that perfection isn't always found in precision. Miara, the fierce warrior princess whose combat skills were matched only by her strategic mind, discovering that true strength lies in adaptation. Lexa, the compassionate youngest sister who saw beyond royal facades and helped bridge worlds through understanding. So now I'm curious, if you found yourself in Thad's position, which princess would capture your heart? Would you be drawn to Elena's brilliant mind and hidden warmth? Perhaps Miara's strength and passion would win your affection? Or would Lexa's genuine heart and quiet wisdom be your perfect match? Or maybe, just maybe, you think King Zareth had the right idea with his outrageous triple marriage proposal? Though we all know how that turned out. Share your thoughts. After all, love stories are always better when shared, whether they're set among crystal spires or primitive earth burger joints. Remember, in matters of the heart, sometimes the most perfect choice is the one that seems perfectly impossible at first. So who would you choose? And more importantly, what kind of cheeseburger would you introduce them to first? Looking forward to your answers.